Hello, everybody. This is the Writing Gals. I'm Michelle Pennington,
And I'm Victorine Lieske.
and we are starting a new series called Trope Talk. So, we're going to bring you episodes where we pick out a specific trope and we talk about it. And today we decided to start with Second Chance Romance. Now, Victorine, why did we start with that one?
Because my next book is Second Chance Romance.
That's right. So she's really excited about this one. And I started thinking about it. I don't think I've written many books that have this trope. I can think of one of my 35 titles. There are second chance romance. So it must not be I don't know, a big thing with me. So tell me, why did you want to write a second chance romance?
Oh, I just love the tension that just is initially there with Second Chance Romance, right? Because they already have this huge backstory between the two of them. Something split them up, and maybe you know what it is and maybe you don't know what it is right away, but there's this tension that's just built into the story before you even start. That I love that delicious tension between the two characters. So
Yeah, and maybe that's why I struggle with it, because we all know I hate conflict. But you're right. It just starts at the beginning because something went wrong. They were in love
yes.
before. If it's a second chance, that means that they've been in love before and
Yes.
something went wrong. People got hurt and they broke apart. Um, so you all have two good things going for you, not just the conflict, but you also have an established knowledge of each other, right?
Yes.
But I think what's necessary to this trope is that they had to have grown since they knew
Mm,
each other before, right? Because
yes.
we still need to have that stage of them getting to know each other a
Mhm.
little bit, don't you think?
Yes, definitely. 'Cause you're getting to know the new you, right?
Right.
Not the old person they knew.
Exactly. So I've been thinking about this. Do you think that they always have to have bitter feelings?
I
Or
think there always has to be at least one of them has hurt feelings. It doesn't have to be like total hatred toward each other, but I think there has to be some feelings of hurt or feelings of betrayal between the two of them because like you said, something went wrong
right?
between them and they split up. If both of them are like having these longing, oh, I wish I had so and so back, then that destroys the tension that is really built into Second Chance Romance. So
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that they can have buried them, like
yeah.
buried their feelings really deeply. And so maybe you don't have, a lot of drama at the
Yes.
beginning, but that comes out. And maybe that those feelings have warped their perception of love or their desire to have a relationship with anybody. I think that part of your setup for a second chance romance is really exploring how their view of the world and of life has been impacted by this
Mm,
person or their relationship with that person.
yes.
Um, and then I do want to mention, though, anytime anytime there's a breakup, you have to decide, did both people do something wrong? Was it just a misunderstanding, or was one person in particular just the bad guy? And in
Mhm.
that case, you could easily walk into the trap of pushing a character too far down a villain role to be able to bring them back into love interest role. So what are some situations that you might want to tread lightly on or even avoid completely?
I would avoid completely the total cheating thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, y that's really
Deal breaker for a lot of readers.
yeah, deal breaker that's a great way to put it. Deal breaker for a lot of readers is if there's some cheating, don't don't like romanticize it. Don't make it or downplay it or anything like that. That's something really careful to walk on. If it's just they thought they cheated, I guess you could do that, but that's also really that's be very careful about that because that's the whole thing built on a misunderstanding, which a lot of readers don't like that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So I would steer clear of that if I were
Yeah.
you.
And I think in general, there are a lot of people who have experienced cheating in their relationships before, possibly repeat cheating, and so like to bring a cheater back from like his misdeeds kind of fights against this idea that women need or knowledge women need to have, that like once someone cheats, do they really have the kind of character that would keep them from doing it again, right?
Right.
And so that's why so many women are hurt by it, and avoid the trope, is that they don't feel like that is something that you can be redeemed from or redeemed from easily.
Yeah.
So that's a whole big thing with this trope to be aware of. And I also think abuse falls into the same category, obviously.
Yes.
But what are some other reasons that they might have had a breakup that you can, aren't quite as serious, but are still kind of a big deal? Can you think of like good reasons to break people up? Because I mean, some of it, like you mentioned, a misunderstanding. I think that
Be careful of misunderstanding just because it's done so often, and readers don't like that all they could have done was had a one conversation to fix, whatever's the problem is. So I would try to make it a little bit more than just a misunderstanding.
yeah.
But yeah, like you said, you don't want to make it something so bad that you can't come back from it.
But you still want that conflict, right? You still
Yeah,
want to feel like,
need
oh yeah, that's a big deal. How are they ever going to get around that to be together
yes,
again? So like it
yes.
might be something like where their lifestyles just don't fit together, or their
Mhm.
personalities are just polar opposites. Or maybe they both have personal goals that are in opposition to each other.
Yes.
And so those are the kinds of conflicts that you can totally make it understandable why they broke up in the first place, and give you strong conflict that continues into this stage of their, story, but is overcomable, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Now, so I think they've split, they've broken apart. So one of the obvious mechanics of this trope is somehow they have to be smashed back together again,
Yes.
right?
So you could either have one of them longing for the other one, and they're the driving force of pulling these two back together, or you have to force them together from some outside force, like they both work together now, or something outside of them.
Or one of them has to move back into the neighborhood, or
Mhm.
somebody writes a will.
Yes. I've seen that several times.
Yes. So just come up with some kind of reason to put them back together again. And like you said, maybe one of them is the one who's manipulating that situation. And I do think that's cool. I actually love that trope where one of the characters, especially when it's the guy, is pretending to be cold on the outside, but at the same time, he's the one that's like working the situation, and like you find out, yeah, he got transferred back to her office, but he's the one that requested the transfer.
Exactly.
That kind of
Yeah.
thing.
The one I'm going to write is going to be, he's going to be the driving force for the relationship because he wants her back. So yeah, I like that he falls first.
Yes.
So.
Or he never fell out of love.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. And in that situation, he's probably the one that did something wrong, right? Because otherwise he wouldn't have kicked him out. He would be trying to get back with her. So it's like when you're trying to figure out your grand gesture and your like makeup sort of scene, like that all kind of plays into the structure of your overall plot, right?
Yes.
And that's why understanding the mechanics of a trope and what all goes into it is so important, because it does affect the entire story, from backstory to the, hook, through all of their obstacles, their conflict, their final like grand gesture, makeup scene, confession, happily ever after. It's all implied there. So to me, one of the things that is massively important in a second chance romance is that the chemistry between them never left. Like it was always there. And it just has to spark again. And
Yes.
that spark of chemistry is what makes it so hard for them to keep hiding their feelings and ignoring their feelings.
Absolutely.
So how can you spark chemistry in a second chance romance?
Well, you have to be careful with chemistry in a second chance romance because it's really easy to take it from ground zero to full, 10 in a second chance because they already have all this backstory
Right.
and they already have all these feelings
Yeah.
of love that they've
There's
had.
no tentative like, "Ooh, we held hands for the first time," right?
Right, right. Yeah,
So, I think it's a really good point, and, I think that's why the conflict is so important because then they're going to feel the chemistry, it's happening, and they have to be like, "No, no, no, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea because of this. I'm going to
yeah,
avoid these feelings and being close to him because I don't wanna be lured back into feeling things for this person."
yeah,
And so you're right. The chemistry and conflict are massively important to not have things accelerate too quickly again.
yes.
Um, and then I think that we also need to think about other tropes that go along well with second chance romance. So I think a character trope is like the other woman character.
Mm,
It's because these people have been apart for a while, and it might be like the other man, flip it both ways.
mhm.
But they probably or likely have had other relationships or other people are interested in them in the interim,
Yes,
right? And so it can be really important to fill in some of that conflict by adding this other character in and kind of the intricacies of their lives apart now like coming together and I just love another woman coming in or another man and being this
flubbing it up.
yeah, yeah. Can you
Yes.
think of any other tropes that you like to combine with a second chance romance?
So the first second chance romance story I wrote was my billionaire ex one, and that one I had a matchmaker in it, and she was the driving force of pushing them together, and
Mhm,
that was super fun because neither one of them wanted to be with the other one, but Graham's was the matchmaker, and she knew they loved each other, so she was always shoving them together, and I had a blast writing that.
mhm. One I see common is, Secret Baby.
Mm.
That one's used a lot because they broke up and then
And then there was a
didn't know about the
baby.
baby, and
Mhm.
that's one of the devices to pull them back together again, even if they didn't want to be.
I wrote
Um,
that one too.
did you?
Yeah.
So, I the closest I've come to it was I wrote like a Christmas rock star story,
Mm,
and, she didn't like, they were dating in high school, and she didn't choose him, and he went off to, like, go build his rock star career, and in the meantime, she had a bad marriage that she was divorced from and had a young child from, when he came back on the scene, and
uh,
so it wasn't his
not
baby,
his secret baby.
but in the story, that baby, that little girl was like the matchmaker kind of thing, was the
Yes.
force that kind of, helped them bond, and, like, he was able to protect her and take care of her and help her, and that gave them the chance, and he was the one that was pursuing things, and,
Yes.
yeah, so, um, let's see, what are some other tropes that I see a lot? Sometimes I see the, like, contract marriage,
Yeah.
or, fake relationship of some kind that they
Yeah.
needed somebody and that, well, this is, somebody that people wouldn't be surprised I was with or, like, whatever.
Yes.
Um, but I think that as we understand a trope, it's so important to see how the addition of other tropes fleshes it out, builds it, and takes it into a new direction because when
Mhm.
we talk about tropes through this whole series, we wanted to show you the ways that your take on it is going to be fresh and not cliche,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And so just being willing to consider how all these different things can add elements to your story to flesh it out and take it in interesting directions instead of it just becoming like, oh, another second chance romance.
Yep.
Now, do you think people look for second chance romances the way they look for like billionaire romances or like
I do think so. I
it's one
think
of
they're
the
very popular.
I think you're right. I think it's one of the like headliner tropes,
Mhm.
right? That are definitely one of the big categories that people really enjoy reading. If they're into it, they're into it. So
Yes, I think so.
well, this has been fun. Have you got anything else you want to say about second chance romances before we say goodbye?
Gosh, I wrote some notes, but I think we covered it all. The only other thing I wrote down that I hadn't mentioned yet was just remember that your romance, always romance, is about um, the relationship going from point A to point B and that change in relationship. And that's what you want to focus on throughout the entire book is how to go from hurt feelings to feelings of love again, or whatever your arc is going to be. And so that's what your second chance romance is all about, is the change in relationship between your two main
Right.
characters.
I think, and you're exactly right. You have to establish, like when you talk about where people missed the, you know, ballpark I don't know
Mhm.
what that phrase is, on the trope, it's usually because the characters themselves didn't change. Your
Mhm.
characters have to have grown and changed. And
Mhm.
then the relationship has to change because you need to leave the readers feeling like when they get to their happily ever after, that this time it's for keeps.
Exactly.
That there's already been this underlying thing, well, like it didn't work out for them before, what's to say it's going to work out this time? So you as the writer have to create the dynamics and the changes and the growth that will convince the reader that this time it's forever.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Well, if you've enjoyed this, stay tuned. We'll be bringing out more in this series and talking about other tropes. And before we go, we also have a conference that
Yes.
if you're watching this before October 4th,
I
3rd,
think it's 2nd through 5th.
2nd through 5th, it
Yes.
changes every year, so I can't
I
keep.
know.
If you're watching this before the first week of October, be sure to check out our conference. You can register for it. And we have a great booklet with lots of information on all of our teachers. We have over
Yeah,
50
we'll
classes.
link below.
Mhm. We have over 50 classes. We have some interviews with some industry leaders and best-selling authors. And we have a interview with Lee Savino and um, Inez Johnson
Inez Johnson,
and
Brian Cohen.
Brian Cohen. I was like, I just pulled this out of my hat, so I was like trying to remember the names. That is on how to write in a downward economy.
Mhm.
And that interview you can watch as soon as you register up until the time the conference watches. It's like a
I think it's
bonus.
September 30th that will go away, so if you're watching this before, then register quickly.
Yep. So we just wanted to put some bonus content out there, and those three people are amazing. So you don't want to miss that. Anyways,
Yes.
check the link and be sure and like this video if you enjoyed it. If you want to hear more trope talk, and subscribe to our channel so that you can hit every episode as we put them out. So
Sounds good.
thanks.
Thank you.
Happy writing.
Bye.
Bye.